Well, some big changes coming to the U.S. military. The 2020 National Defense Authorization Act, signed into law by the president, requires the Marine Corps to mix men and women together during their training. The Corps has had gender-integrated companies, but the depots at Parris Island in South Carolina and at Pendleton in San Diego will now have to integrate them down to the platoon level.
And to discuss this further, we're joined by Lieutenant Colonel Hal Kempfer, retired Marine Corps intelligence officer and president of KIP, a strategic risk management firm. Colonel Kempfer, thanks for joining us. And how is this going to be a different move from what the military has already been doing? How is this different?
Allison, it's a little bit different when you have different companies, and I should mention that whereas we have recruit training on both the East Coast and the West Coast in San Diego and in Parris Island, this training, the training for female Marines, is all on the East Coast. It's all on Parris Island. So instead of having a company, which is a very large unit involving, say, a couple hundred recruits, you're going to have a platoon of probably about 40 to 60 or 70 recruits mixed in with that company. The ergonomics are interesting because you have to separate the barracks, the showers, the restrooms. You got to remember, a lot of these men and women are coming fresh out of high school. There's a lot of issues that the drill instructors have to deal with. However, the Marine Corps does have the mechanics in place, and we have done this to some extent on the officer training going back decades.
Colonel, are they doing the same type of exercises, the men and women? So if the men have to do 100 push-ups, are the women doing 100 push-ups?
Well, there are slightly different standards. I can tell you that over the last decade or so, there's been a lot of making sure the women are getting the exact same, or the female Marines or recruits are getting the exact same physical challenges as the men. Traditionally, we had slightly different physical fitness standards for men and women. I will say that as women are moving into combat arms occupation specialties like infantry, and you're seeing across the services working into other things like some of the special operations, there is no difference between men and women. It's the same standards across the board. And it's in boot camp with the different obstacles, running, things like that. It's pretty much the same stuff with a few variations, dealing mostly with, height issues. On average, the women are normally a little bit shorter than the men, although there are very short men that go through boot camp as well. But that has to be taken. If you're coming up to a wall, the wall doesn't accommodate height differences. You just have to figure out a way to get over the wall.
Parris Island is legendary in being tough. Is it the same washout ratio?
Bob, that's an interesting thing you asked. I was talking to a friend of mine, a retired colonel, last night who spent a lot of time at the depot, and we were both discussing we'd like to see the exact statistics on a lot of stuff. I would say generally yes, but I'm not 100% sure about the washout ratio between men and women, because those aren't generally statistics they put out as much. They do put those out. I mean, you can get them, but yeah, men and women wash out at a fairly, it's boot camp stuff. That's all it is.
It is. Okay, Lieutenant Colonel, before we let you go, we want to talk to you about Congresswoman Ilhan Omar facing a lot of backlash, and it's over this video. She was caught laughing and giggling during a press conference on Wednesday while her colleagues discussed U.S. casualties from the Iraq war. At the same news conference, Omar also said that Iran crisis gives her PTSD. Take a listen.
I feel ill a little bit because of everything that is taking place, and I think every time I hear about conversations around war, I find myself being stricken with PTSD.
Okay, she hasn't served. You have served. Men and women across the country have served. They're the ones who have suffered from PTSD. What's your reaction to see and hear her say that?
It was a little bit, well, as depressing and a little bit shocking. I don't like to see something as serious as post-traumatic stress disorder. It's a problem. It's not unique to the armed forces, but we see it very prevalent in the armed forces, particularly when you've been in combat. That something like that trivialized to something that she was talking about. It's a very serious malady. I've known Marines and soldiers and others who've had PTSD. Some would say I had PTSD at one time, and they're probably right. But it's a very serious thing. And she seemed to trivialize it, and I just found it offensive.
Absolutely. Well, Lieutenant Colonel Hal Kempfer, retired Marine Corps intelligence officer and president of KIP, a strategic risk management firm. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for your service today, sir.